So this is the measurement we'll be working with. So first thing, before we start cutting, I want to show you what a suit sleeve looks like. So as you can see, this is a shirt sleeve, quite different from a suit sleeve. A shirt sleeve is like an extended part of a shirt. As you can see, it's just smooth. But a suit sleeve, on the other hand, this doesn't look like an extended part of a cloth. It looks like an attachment. As you can see, look at the way it's just positioned. So that's how a suit sleeve looks like. So I'll be showing you what it also looks like after cutting. You have a big part and you have a small part. So that's the big piece and the small piece. So that part will be the suit cap where you attach to the cloth. That's like the slit part where you fold inside and put button, and the extension part. And there is a constant difference between the big part and the small piece. And that constant difference is 3 inches. That is very vital when we start working. So I'll get my ruler and we'll start working. So the first thing you do when you want to cut anything in tailoring is to make your horizontal and your vertical line, your straight line upwards and your straight line sideways. So I'll be making my straight line sideways now. So from those 2 lines, we should be able to get every other line we need. So it looks like that line isn't that visible, so I'll just make it more visible. So the first thing we'll be doing will be taking our sleeve length. Our sleeve length is 25.5, but I'll be adding ½ inch to make it 26. And that ½ inch is the part of the sleeve and the suit sleeve that will be joined to the body of the sleeve. So when you join ½ inch, half is reduced from the normal measurement of the sleeve. So we'll be measuring 26 in 3 places and joining the line. So that line now marks our suit sleeve. Then we'll be measuring extra 2 for the extended part of the suit sleeve that will be folded inwards, as at the wrist part. So what we are doing presently now is the wrist part of the suit. So I've measured extra 2 inches and I chalked and made a line. So the next thing we'll be doing now is the elbow measurement. The elbow measurement is 13.5, but we'll be adding ½ inch, since after joining the suit, ½ inch will be reduced from the measurement. So we'll be measuring 14 inches from the initial line, then we will make a straight line. So that's our elbow part of the suit. So that's from the shoulder to the wrist. The next thing we'll be doing now is to take our sleeve cap, and we'll be using 6.5. We are using 6.5 because we used 10 inches when we were cutting the body of the suit from the shoulder to the underbust. So if you use 10 inches, it's advisable you use 6.5. So we've gotten all our vertical lines, which is the suit cap line, the elbow line, the wrist line. So the next thing we'll be doing is to get our horizontal curves. So the first thing is to take ½ inch from the elbow line, and that is because the suit is not straight, it is curved. So we'll be starting from the suit cap to the wrist, passing through the ½ inch extension. So now that is the new line of our suit sleeve. That's the big part of the suit sleeve. So now to get the small part of the suit sleeve, you will be increasing that measurement by 3 inches, because the difference between the big piece and the small piece of a suit sleeve is 3 inches. That's for standard cutting. The difference should be 3 inches. Just like when you're cutting a trouser, you use the perfect measurement to cut, then you cut the extended part that has the sewing allowance. But unlike that, this will have 3 inches extension, because for a trouser it usually have 2 inches extension. So that means this has 2 inches extension for the sewing allowance plus additional 1 inch to make the button positioning of the suit perfect. So I'll be joining the 3 inches I took uniformly for our smaller piece line. So now this line I'm creating now is for the smaller piece of the suit sleeve. The initial curved line was for the bigger piece. So our bicep actually starts from the elbow to the suit cap. So we are not going to take bicep for everything. Instead, we'll start with our wrist. So the bicep doesn't actually work for the wrist. The wrist is on its own. So now the difference between these two is 3 inches, which means the big line is 3 and the small line is 0 at this point. So the next thing we'll do is we'll add 1 inch. The big line becomes 4 and the small line becomes 1. That's 5. We add 2 inch. The big line becomes 5 and the small line becomes 2. That's 7. When you add 3, it becomes 6 and 3, and that's 9. You add 1 more to make it 4. That's, as you can see, the wrist is 10 inches plus 2 inches for sewing allowance. That will make it 12 inches. So we keep adding till the addition of both will give us 12 inches. And when we get our points, we'll mark. And the other points we got for the wrist is actually 7.5 for the big part, which will make the smaller part 4.5. And the addition of both will give you 12 inches. As you can see, I've already done the math before starting the video, so I can explain. That's 7.5 plus 4.5. So that's our wrist part. Initially, like I mentioned, our wrist is 10, but with the addition of 2 inches, that made it 12. So now our bicep starts from our elbow to our sleeve cap, and our bicep is 13 plus 2 inches sewing allowance. That will make it 15. The sewing allowance is ½ inch on both sides of the big piece and the small piece. That's ½ inch. Everything will give you 2. So you add that 2 inches to our measurement and you get 15 for our bicep. So initially the big line is 3 and the small line is 0. When you add 1, the big line becomes 4 and the small line becomes 1. That's 5. You add 1 more, the big line becomes 5 and the small line becomes 2. You add 1 more, the big line becomes 6, the small line becomes 3. You add another 1, the big line becomes 7, the small line becomes 4. You add another 1, the big line becomes 8 and the small line becomes 5. You add another 1, the big line becomes 9 and the small line becomes 6, and that's 15. So at that point, that's our bicep measurement. You mark it. So the next thing, the bicep is from the shoulder downwards, but from the shoulder to the wrist, we'll join with our line. So as you can see, I'm trying to reduce the excess lines I'll be drawing. If not, I would have taken the bicep all around and just make the whole construction look confusing. But instead, I've started my bicep from the elbow, then I'm joining that elbow to the wrist. I don't really like using all this French curve. For me, I just feel like it messes things up more than it helps. So now our bicep will continue from our shoulder measurement upwards. So I took my 9 measurement from the big part there, and I will just continue doing that. Basically, you can see I'm using broken lines because I'm trying to make my chalk really visible, so I just don't want the lines to be too many and confusing. So I took my 9 from that point too. So the next thing we'll be doing now is to work on our sleeve cap. Now this is where we are working on. For our sleeve cap, normally we are supposed to just divide this box into half on both sides. But the first thing we'll do is we'll take ½ inch upward. That curve will meet that ½ inch, and this other one will meet the initial line, so that when we are joining both pieces, the circular shape will not be affected. Because if it meets the initial point, when you join the big piece and the small piece, the circular shape will be affected. So now I'm taking 1 inch inwards from the vertical line. I'm taking 1 inch inwards, and I'm doing that because you will soon see the reason why I'm doing that. I don't want both curves to be the same, and you will see the both curves I'm talking about. So now after taking 1 inch inwards, the newly formed box is what will be divided, and not the initial suit cap box. The initial suit cap box was 6.5. Now the newly formed box is 5.5. So I'll be dividing the 5.5 into 2, which I'm doing now. So I'm dividing the new box into 2. That's 5.5. So I've done that vertically. I'll be dividing I'll be dividing now the other part, which is 4.5, because initially it was 9. So I'll just divide it. Now you can see I divided the new box, not the old box I created there, because I moved 1 inch inwards, and I will show you why now. Now from that ½ inch I took upwards, because I don't want the curve to be affected when I'm sewing. That ½ inch is for the sewing allowance and to protect the curve. Now I'll join to that part. Now this is the reason why I took 1 inch inwards. As you can see, I've even forgotten I'm using a French curve. I don't really like this stuff. Even with the fact that I'm a science student and I did a lot of technical drawing, I still don't really like anything tailoring and using French curve. I prefer using my hands. Well, it is necessary at this point. Now I'm joining that curve to that other point. So look what I'm doing now. I'll join this curve. Let me use my free hand. I'll join this curve to this point. But when I'm joining the other part, I will not join into this point. I will join into the initial 1 inch position before I extended it. And that was the main reason why I took 1 inch inwards, so that this curve I'm drawing now will be bigger than the opposite corresponding curve of it. You can see now. So this curve I made now is bigger than the former one. So now the next thing I need to do now is to take ½ inch upwards at the top of my box. And this is also for the nature of the curve. If I take ½ inch inwards, it will affect the curve when I'm joining the big piece and the small piece. So I have to take ½ inch upward. Then I will join that ½ inch to the shoulder point of my bicep. And that has to happen because when you are joining, you will see that ½ inch you are putting upward will disappear, remaining only the curve. Now I have to readjust the camera because I want to specifically work on the wrist now, because I want you to see what I'm doing clearly. Now that wrist, I will take ½ inch outward at that part, because I want it to have a slant. I want it to have a slant wrist line when I wear it, so that at the bottom part the shirt I'm wearing inwards will show. So I've taken a slant line now. It is from that slant line now that I will get those my slits that I will take the measurement now, not the initial line. So from that slant line now, I'll take 2 inches and I'll mark. Now for your slant, you can measure 6, you can measure 5, but for here I'll be using 6 inches. So I'll measure 6 inches. Then from the slant line upward again, I'll measure 6 inches and I'll draw a line. That line, I'll measure 2 inches and join the 2 inches to the initial 2 inches and measure the former slant line. So we'll be readjusting the camera back to its original position. So as you can see, the suit sleeve outlook is ready. So all I'll be doing now is to chalk it out to make it look evidently visible. So I'll be chalking out every part of what I will be cutting out for you to see. So as you can see, I always try to make sure I do things the unconventional way, so nothing looks like magic. Now the only thing I did here that looks like magic is my suit cap that I said I used 6.5. The reason why I use 6.5 is this: when you use 10 inches for your underbust from your shoulder when you are cutting the body of a suit, it is better you use 6.5, because after using 6.5, the sleeve cap is always bigger than the armhole of the suit, so it gives you the opportunity to reduce the armhole so it can form the cap shape of the sleeve. So if you want to use, like, let's say 8 inches for your underbust measurement, you can just do the simple mathematics. When you use 10, you use 6. When you use 8, what will you use? You do 8 times 6.5 divided by 10, so you get whatever you want to use. So you can use from those two to get any measurement you want. So that's the only magic you can just say I did there, but that's like a standard. It's just like cutting trousers. When you're cutting for an adult, your seat you mostly use 10. So for your underbust you use 10. For your suit cap you use 6.5. So the next thing we'll be doing now is to cut off what we've marked out. And by the way, I'm working on a suit that I've been making a video for a while now. I'm still working on it, that's why I haven't posted it. So before I publish it, I just want to use this opportunity to tell you to subscribe to the channel. So I'll be sharing my experience on how I made this suit from beginning to the end. So this is not the sleeve of the suit, but I'll be dropping a video as well on how to sew a sleeve of a suit, and that particular outfit would be what I would use in making that video of how to sew a sleeve. I actually dropped a video on how to cut a suit with that outfit. You can check my channel, you will see. So that particular outfit, the making of that suit video would be totally on my channel. So I'll be dropping videos of how to sew a suit in different stages. So I would advise you subscribe to the channel and click the notification bell so you can get notified whenever those videos drop. Because if you have this channel as a subscribed channel, I guarantee you should be able to make your own suit outfit from scratch. So we've cut out our big piece of the suit sleeve. So the next thing we'll be doing now is rearranging it to cut the smaller piece. As you can see, the smaller piece is already shiny. You can see I marked out the lines really shiny, so it is really easy for you to just cut out if you can just follow. So, but what I'm doing now, I think I need to extend the lines, the construction lines first before I do it. So let me extend the construction lines before I start cutting. So I'm extending the construction lines. So it will enable me to place it perfectly well. Now I can chalk out every part. So I'm checking under to make sure where the part of the smaller piece starts from is not outside the material I'm supposed to cut off. So I'll chalk out that part of the smaller piece. So you have to use the big piece to cut the small piece because you'll be joining the big piece to the small piece. So if you check this video very well, if your hands are very straight, you don't really need curves and all those stuff. Once you can get the big piece, you will use the big piece to cut out the small piece. And you will see me doing it now. So I've chalked out that part. The next thing is to mark the essential points of the other part. And after marking it, I don't even need a curve to join it. I will use the big part to join those curves. So I've marked out the point. And the next thing I will do is to use the big piece of the suit to join those lines. Because you always have to use one part to join the other part, because when you are sewing, you are joining one part to the other part, and both parts have to be of the same shape to join perfectly well. So that's the line. It's remaining the suit cap. And after I'm done, I'll have to chalk it out very well so you can see. So I'll do the same. I'll just mark out the essential points, and I'll just join those points. Then after doing that, I use my chalk to make the lines more visible. And normally I do this stuff just for teaching purposes. If I'm cutting, I don't really think I need to make my lines that thick, because if your lines are too thick, it's more difficult when you're cutting, because you find it hard to get the perfect line. Instead, when you're cutting, you can actually use a tiny chalk that has like tiny parts to create your lines. But I'm just using this kinds of chalk so it can be more visible for the video. So the next thing I'll do is to cut out the smaller piece. And let me remind you once more, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, do subscribe. There are loads of good videos I've made. I'm just waiting for the right time to start dropping them. So do subscribe. So you just have to be careful. As you can see, I placed my hand on the material when I'm cutting, because you're cutting two materials at the same time. You have to make sure you're not cutting one outside the other. So that's our smaller piece of the suit sleeve. So the last thing we'll just do is place the smaller piece on the big piece to check for any small excess. So you can just trim off. So I'll place the small piece on the big piece and just check if there's any part that is bigger than the other part. Then I'll just trim off. As you can see, I'll bring it down to the other part too. Check if there is any excess. If there's any excess, I'll trim off. If there's no excesses, then we are done. So that is it. Subscribe to the channel and expect more good videos. Thank you.